So I moved around a lot as a kid, but I sort of spent the formative years in Houston and in Orlando, right? Two big space cities where space is covered all the time. It's in the newspaper, way more than it is throughout the rest of the country and the rest of the world. But even despite that, and did Boy Scout trips to Johnson Space Center, even despite that, I don't think I realized as a kid that you could work in the space industry. I knew because of my eyes, I was disqualified for being a NASA astronaut. And at that age, at least at that time, that was the only job to a kid. I didn't realize that there was another industry. And so I liked space in the way that all kids like space, but I didn't have this particular drive to work in it just because I didn't see the opportunities. And it really wasn't until college, and it's sort of one of these random coincidence stories. My freshman year at college, I was walking around in the halls of the Science Center, and I saw a sign for the freshman kickoff meeting for the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS. And it was starting in 5 minutes or something in the room I was just walking by. And I said, well, you know what, I kind of like space. Let me stick around and see if I like it. I ended up really liking the club. I liked the people involved with it. I liked the activities. Got involved, became an officer pretty quickly. And it was really through that and through that group's activities that I started to realize, oh man, this is a real field that you can work in, that you can contribute to, even if you're not Superman like the astronaut corps is. So did that, through that, started getting quite involved in the advocacy community. When I was a student in SEDS, the big annual trip was to do an event called March Storm, which was a lobbying event that had sort of this commercial bent to it. It was advocating for more money for NASA and more money for space exploration, but also had a little bit of a specific agenda to push. Let's privatize some of this. Let's involve the private industry. Let's have a distribution of labor that allows us to sort of achieve these greater goals. And that, I think, planted a seed in my mind enough so that as I graduated and entered into the workforce, it sort of occurred to me I was interested in working in that side of the business. I like the pace of it. I like some of the risk environments. I like some of the incentive structure. Everything about it. It kind of appeals to me more. So I ended up changing my major. I'd come into college thinking I would do chemistry. Changed it to Earth and Planetary Sciences. Worked in the planetary sciences for a while. Got the chance to do this really fantastic program called the NASA Academy at Goddard Space Flight Center, which is a NASA leadership training program. And through that, got this really wonderful education in what the industry is actually like and the who's who of it, and had this chance to sit down, kind of like you're doing with these videos, sit down with the people who are actually doing stuff, have them loosen the tie a little bit, tell them how they got their job, tell them, what do they see as the real critical needs for the workforce of the future, and take heavy notes. And that sort of one thing led to another and put me where I am today. So I work at a company called Virgin Galactic. We are hoping to be the world's first space line. We're part of the Virgin Group, so if you've flown Virgin Atlantic or Virgin America, we're in that same group of families. We were founded by Sir Richard Branson, the head of the Virgin Group, who is a charismatic guy. He's a sort of a brilliant innovator, and he is a guy whose ambition knows no bounds and who is not afraid to try these really ambitious, world-changing projects. And he had been involved in a program called the Virgin Atlantic Global Flyer, where he was building this aircraft, meant to be the first aircraft, and ultimately was the first aircraft to fly around the world nonstop. And the guy building it was this gentleman named Burt Rutan in the company called Scale Composites. And when Sir Richard would go and visit Burt to check up on the progress of his project, he would always hear, oh, you should see what Burt has going on in the other room. It's even cooler. And eventually found out that it was a spacecraft, and it was this vehicle called Spaceship One, which eventually won this $10 million NSAR-EX prize. And Sir Richard, I think, found that story incredibly inspiring, but it was also the proof positive that he'd been searching for decades, that commercial industry could do space travel, that we could do it safely, we could do it routinely, we could do it affordably. Because he knew, having grown up watching the Apollo flights, he knew that he wanted to go and lots of other people wanted to go, but he also knew that that's not NASA's job. It's not that NASA couldn't do that, that's not what we asked NASA to do, it's not what we fund NASA to do. He knew the only way that he was going to get to go and that his friends would get to go and that every little kid growing up in the world would have a chance to go was if private industry was selling tickets. So started this company, Virgin Galactic, commercializing essentially a second version of that vehicle that did successfully fly to space in 2004. We've scaled it up from Spaceship One, which is now in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. It was a 3-seater vehicle. and we decided that it didn't necessarily make sense to fly a 3-seater vehicle because that wouldn't generate a whole lot of revenue for a flight. You were probably looking at a pilot, co-pilot, and only one passenger. So now we've built Spaceship 2. The vehicle is fully constructed. It's in testing right now in Mojave, and that vehicle is going to be flying 6 paying passengers and 2 crew, so 8 people on flights into space in the very near future. And we think it's going to go, we are designing the service to go on a daily basis, maybe even more frequently than that. So just offering for this first time the chance for everyone to go when you want to go regardless of your academic background. If you can find the means to pay for a ticket, you should have a chance to go. We at Virgin Galactic and I think a number of other companies are developing these vehicles for an initial core market of tourism. We've recognized that there are a lot of people out there who are fortunate to have wealth to be able to pay a reasonable amount of money for a truly unique experience. And we've been successful in signing those up. As of today, I think we've taken deposits on something like 440 flights, which when you compare it to the total number of people that have been to space compares quite favorably. We think that's a huge market, but I also think it's a mistake to sort of pigeonhole us as just a tourism market, because I don't think we are. I think we are working on something that is of much more social importance. In the same way that, we couldn't have, I think it's important to remember that the HMS Beagle wasn't created for Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was riding along in a vehicle that had been created for another purpose. Similarly, we're creating a vehicle to serve another purpose, but I think we will be the enablers for a new generation of scientists that, we can only aspire to them doing as much as Darwin did, but that will be coming up with absolutely new experiments in a huge variety of fields. The vehicle that we built to carry people just to have a good time and to experience this sort of Zen-like environment will also carry the hard-hitting scientist and his or her equipment and give them access to an environment that either they've never been able to access before or that they're able to access only on very rare occasion and very great expense. When we get to the point where we're flying daily or multiple times per day, that allows something that the sounding rocket community can't do, and certainly the orbital rocket community can't do. If you are a scientist and you have a brilliant idea for a payload, chances are, if you go in and say, I want to fly it, a rocket provider will say, okay, how does 2015 sound to you? If you go and say, I want to study Tropical Storm Ben that's in the Gulf right now, they're going to laugh. That's the kind of market that we're going to be able to service. And people are going to be using it to observe the climate, and they're going to be using it to observe manufacturing process in this huge variety of fields that may not have been the specific reason why we designed the vehicles, but are absolutely part of both our business plan, but also what we feel is sort of our corporate responsibility to contributing to sort of society as a whole and development of all these other technologies.